Hey everybody, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture and the last Justice League Monday. Not just the last of 2025, the last period, unless I decide to do more of these sometime in the future. We've reached the finale. One a week, starting in January with issue number 1. And here we are at the end of the year with Justice League America number 52. Justice League Europe number 28 from July of 1991. All right. So, we're going to do this a little slightly differently this time because although this is sort of a fun little one-shot issue, Gardner versus Blue Beetle, there is a shocking moment at the end that launches the next kind of 15-issue crossover series of these books. And it is also referenced at the end of this one. And if we're trying to think in terms of continuity, Martian Manhunter is here, and Martian Manhunter is here. And since he couldn't be in two places at one time, it seems that this story should come first, and then this one, but we're actually going to go from here to here, and then back here for the last panels or so. All right. So let's dive into Justice League Europe. First, the man who wears the star. What's that a reference to? You get a no prize if you know. Put it in the comments. The man who wears the star. Okay. So last issue, the surviving, so to speak, members of the Justice League Europe, Captain Atom, Rocket Red, and Metamorpho, head across the Atlantic to recruit some help in taking on Starro. And they need a little bit of stealth, so Martian Manhunter goes in alone. He doesn't bring the rest of the league. It's just him and those other three. And in the ensuing fight, Starro conquers the Martian Manhunter, which makes him significantly more powerful. And the rest of the league has the same issue that they had before. How do they take on their friends? They can't really hurt them because these guys, as they're controlled by Starro, and they may be fighting it, but they're still controlled. They're out to kill. They're not going to pull any punches at all. So we see them surrounded down here, fighting against the League. Hold on a second there. There we go. So then we see them surrounded by the League, and it's looking bad for them. It's looking bad. And they're pretty much left with the same strategy they've had before, which is we've got to run. We've got to try to evade them until we can come up with some better plan. Well, a better plan is going to emerge, although not for them, because when they boom tubed into the Justice League Embassy last issue, Kilowog, also controlled by Starro, and we should really say not just controlled by Starro, but at the moment he is Starro. Starro conquers their bodies. Their minds are sort of put out of commission. But by doing this, he's discovered what those tubes were for, so he decides to test them out. And he's like, well, it may kill this guy that I'm controlling, but that's okay. I've got plenty of other bodies that I can control. Well, he pops in, and of course, Blue Beetle and Gardner are aware of what's going on, because they were warned along with John Jones. So he pops in, and when he does, the star falls off of his face and sort of dissolves. So he's now free. Well, Starro realizes he's lost contact with that starfish, and he doesn't know if it's because the tube, killed the subject or just killed the starfish, or it's out of his range. Apparently he has a range through which he can control people, which does create a problem for him conquering the whole world. We don't know what that range is, but apparently it doesn't extend all the way to the US of A. So he basically is going to use Crimson Fox to test the whole thing again. Well, back in America, they start looking for ways you can get rid of starfish, things that'll kill them. And one of those things is intense cold. And everybody's looking at ice. Aha. All right. But they got to be smart about how they do this. They need some kind of plan to get her in there. Boy, things are going to work out for them. Meanwhile, Captain Atom, Metamorpho, and Rocket Red are under heavy pressure from Starro. They're fleeing, they're running, and they decide what we need to do. What we need to do is go back for the tubes. We need to get out of here. And he realizes this. And he decides to fly in and meet them there as well. So they bust into the embassy, and they have to basically try to bull their way through all of their friends, which they're doing. Obviously not, trying not to hurt them, but they got to get through them. But again, they have a big problem. Because what are they going to do to the normal humans there? And basically, here's where Starro goes straight up. He says, you need to surrender, or they're going to be gone. And Captain Atom and Rocket Red, what else can they do? So he lowers his protective shell. He takes off his helmet, and they are now conquered. But Metamorpho is simply not human. Starro can't conquer him no matter what. So Starro decides that he has to go permanently. And as he backs away from Captain Atom, Blue Beetle pops in, grabs him into the tube, and gets him back to America. All right. And he says, how did they know? How did they know that Metamorpho was right there? Well, they're tapped into the security cameras. That's how they knew. And so now Starro understands that, and he basically gives them an ultimatum. He says, I know you can see me. You have tapped into your own security cameras, haven't you? You slipped in by way of your tubes when I had no body in this room. I like how he says that, not nobody, but no body in this room. That is my fault. This room, of all rooms, I should have watched every moment. Pity. These would have been such useful things, but I can manage without them, and I cannot have you pestering me like this. Well, I told you I have been developing a taste for irony in my long solitude. And destroying what I'd been happiest to discover makes for a nice little irony. So he's going to destroy the tubes, and then he says, no, wait a minute. That's what you wanted me to do. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I have a better idea. One by one, you will come here and submit to my stars, or I will begin killing the people of London. Oh, of course, that's, Ice. She's going to be the one shocked by that. But Kilowog, well, what do you know? This is perfect. Say what? And so the first person to pop in is Ice. And before Starro knows what happens, she encases, his star and Martian Manhunter's head in ice. My name is Ice, in case you didn't figure it out. And that is what ends the control of Starro. Once the central star is taken out, all the other little stars just dissolve into nothing. And we get a return here of an old favorite, Manga Con. They bring in Manga Con. They make a trade. We'll give you Starro for your collection. You're going to owe us a favor. Now, look, did they have something in mind for what favor that was going to be? Not necessarily, but that's a great way to set up a hook for a future issue or a way to get out of a problem, to know that Manga Con owes them one. And now before we turn the page, we're going to look at Justice League America. Because like I said, if I turn the page, I'm going to give away the shock ending of this issue. And this issue is where the shock ending actually happens. Well, it starts with Blue Beetle, absolutely terrified. Oh, by the way, Keith Giffen, plot and breakdowns, J.M. DeMatteis script, Trevor Von Eeden, pencils, Randy Elliott, inks, Bob Lappin, letterer, Gene D'Angelo, colorist, Kevin Dooley, trainer, Andy Helfer, referee. You know what? I was remiss. I didn't do it for this one. Let's not forget. Keith Giffen, plot and breakdowns, Gerard Jones, script and script, Bart Sears, pencils and pencils, Randy Elliott, inks and inks, Bob Lappin, letters and borders, Kevin D'Angelo, colors and colors, Kevin Dooley, this and that, Andy Helfer, stuff in nonsense. Okay, So what is horrifying the Blue Beetle here? He's developing quite a paunch. And so what we have to figure is that after Starro is dealt with, John Jones and the American League members, really ICE is the only one who was over there, they go back to New York, and this stuff happens. And while this stuff is happening, is roughly analogous with when MangaCon is being contacted and showing up to take Starro away. And you'll notice that's quite a gut on Blue Beetle. And in the last couple issues, there's been no gut on Blue Beetle. So, you know, he's eating a lot of Oreos. Well, I mean, that's mostly the Martian Manhunter, but he's probably eating a few of them too. He's getting out of shape, but they really haven't shown him getting out of shape at this point in the comic. Now, they are from this point on. That's going to become more prominent. But he's discovering that an old problem of his, because he was a chubby nerd and picked on a lot, he took the weight off and got strong around in college. It's when he started, as he said, having more self-respect. But he's fallen back into those bad habits, and he's gaining weight, puts on his old college sweatshirt because it was so big, it would cover up the paunch. And he knows he's something he needs to do about this. At this point, breakfast time, Kilowog, Martian Manhunter, and there's Fire, who he goes, "Oh, you're up kind of early." He's like, "Well," she says, "I'm actually just getting in." So she's been partying a lot, and that's going to come up in future issues a little bit as well. But Kilowog is finding out that there is a new Alien Registration Act. So aliens, as in from other planets, are going to have to register in the United States or they will be deported. And he tells Kilowog, "Well, if I were you, I'd just ignore it." And he goes, "Well, are you going to ignore it?" He's like, "Unless Mars has been made the 51st state, this affects you too, buddy. So what are they going to do about that?" Meanwhile, Guy Gardner and General Glory are working out, and Guy's friggin' dying here. I mean, he's in pretty good shape, but he is not in General Glory shape. And so Beetle kind of pops in and says, "Hey, can I join in too?" And, why, of course, glad to see that someone around here doesn't have to be dragged kicking and screaming into good health. Well, Guy Gardner, being the jerk that he is, of course, starts making fun of Blue Beetle, grabs his love handles, etc., uses some of the taunts that were used on him when he was a kid, and Beetle is pretty PO'd about it. And the two of them start scrapping. And of course, John Jones is like, "What now? What freaking now?" Well, General Glory says, "Look, why don't we settle this the way we did back in my day with a boxing match?" So, hence the cover, we are going to have a boxing match between Ted Kord and Guy Gardner. And of course, Guy Gardner thinks he's going to just mop up the floor with this guy. We get a moment here between Fire and Ice where Fire is dragging Ice out every night to party. And she's like, "I just cannot take this, And she notes that when Oberon was still there, kind of calmed B down a little bit, And now, with him off with Mr. Miracle, she's going crazy, just going out all the time. But here she's kind of goes, "Oh, hey, we got to go." And she's like, "We just got in." She goes, No, not out there. In here." She's found out about the boxing match, and she's very, very excited about it. And at that moment, who arrives at Justice League Embassy but the Batman? "Joker, Two-Face, Penguin, I faced the worst this world has to offer and never once flinched. So why is it that every time I come within 50 feet of this embassy, I get knots in my stomach? Oh well, deep breath, steady mind, and into the breach." And he discovers very soon that the fight is going on. By the way, just gotta point out, that's a real nice Batman. Good job, Trevor Van Eeden. Yeah, it's Van Eeden. That would be Dutch. Von would be German. And it would be pronounced fun. Okay. Any rate, so he finds out what's going on. Also a little bit about the Alien Registration Act. I mean, just basically that Kilowog is pretty PO'd about the whole thing. And so we get the match. And he's thinking, Martian Manhunter, actually this might not be such a bad idea. It prevents them from destroying the furniture, and it just could be a lesson for both of them. A lesson in what? I haven't figured that out yet. So the fight begins, and Guy Gardner gets a little bit of a surprise because Ted Cord, even though he's let himself go a little bit, is a very skilled fighter, and Guy isn't using his ring. And he lets him know, hey, I had to take on some bullies in my day. I'm used to this, and you're going to regret it. And man, Fire is just like, yes, Guy's going to get killed. She is so, so excited about this. And so they go at it. And he makes Guy Gardner bleed. And in the words of that character from Dodgeball, nobody makes Guy Gardner bleed his own blood. And as a result, Guy comes up from behind and sucker punches Blue Beetle and then kicks him when he's down. And General Glory's screaming at him, Guy, no! They're all freaking out. They pull Guy off, and this is it. This is the last straw. Why don't you mind your own business, you green-skinned Guy? All of you, just let me alone. Oh, we'll let you alone, all right. Totally alone. As of this moment, Guy Gardner, you're finished here. What? Your membership is revoked. You are out of the Justice League. Now pack up and go. And he's saying, well, only Max can kick me out. And he's like, yeah. And as soon as Max gets here, I'm going to be letting him know what happened. So he stomps out, and Ice goes after him. And B is like, oh, Tora, don't do this. Do not go after this dude. He's not worth it. And of course, Guy acts like a complete and utter jerk to Tora. I don't need anybody. Oh, and B has just about had it. Well, broke some ribs on Beetle. He's going to be okay. But he's kind of also going, like, I'm a superhero. He should not have been able to sneak up behind me that way. He's realizing that he's got to get his crap together. So here we have him looking depressed in his sick bed. And here we have Guy Gardner looking depressed and alone in his room. By the way, nice shot, small figure with the surroundings, kind of shows the mindset of Guy Gardner. Very well done. And Green Flame busts in. That is the final straw. Who in hell do you think you are? That woman cares for you more than any human being should ever care for a slug like you. And you repay her by treating her like your personal doormat? What's between me and Ice ain't none of your business. She's like, oh. Those were, by the way, the wrong words to say. You come within 10 feet of her again, and you'll see how much of my business it is. Hey, you can't threaten me, and you can't get between me and Ice. Just watch me. Slam. And there he is. Once again, feeling very alone. Damn. Now that right there is character development. It's a really good job. It's like I said about this book. It's not just a funny book. There's a lot more to it than that. Now we get to the shock ending as Max arrives at the embassy with the woman that he's been seeing. We saw her a few issues ago, Wanda. And, she really means a lot to him. And he's actually nervous about her meeting the members of the League because they're insane. And as they get up to the door, he suddenly collapses. Oh my God, Max. And dude, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. And this is also pretty good. We see the reaction, and then we see him going down. That's done very well, but that's beautiful. That's just a beautiful job. This book was blessed with a lot of really good art. And here we have He's been shot. So that is going to set up the breakdowns. Storyline as Maxwell Lord has been shot. And at this point, we can flip the page. Here, Captain Adam is conversing with Catherine. Everybody's taking a nap. And he's like, God, she's still going. Like, that's amazing. And then she gets the call from John Jones. Maxwell Lord has been shot. Continued in JLA number 53, the start of a serious as heck 15-part Justice League crossover, membership changes, villains, slugfests, call a doctor, and get ready for breakdowns. Okay. And you guys can get ready for breakdowns as well, because I think I'm going to do a video on it, but not super, super, super right away. But this is the end, beautiful friends, of Justice League Monday. What a long, strange trip it has been. Since Justice League, notice no international, no America, no Europe, just Justice League. Number one, launching a new series, bringing the Justice League back after Justice League of America had ended under some fairly, tough conditions, to be honest with you. This was one of the first series that I started reading regularly when I first got into comic books when I was in junior high. And it was kind of a revelation to me because, I've been reading some other books, superheroes, fighting, drama, etc. And this comic was funny. And I'm like, whoa, you can do that with a comic book? You can be funny? Well, not a whole lot of comic books were doing that, frankly, other than these guys. And that is kind of what the book is mostly remembered for these days, is the funny. But the fact of the matter is, Justice League International, we'll just call it, was a lot more than just funny. You got some really fantastic stories in the book. Superhero action, just the kind of stuff you would want to see. Battles between good guys and villains. You got the extremists. You got, maybe not the Injustice League, but you got some really great battles, some really good action in this book. It wasn't just comedy. And you also got a lot of drama in this book and a lot of character development. This book was showing up at just about the same time as the trend in deconstructions of comic book heroes was becoming prominent in the American superhero comic book scene. They were bringing over British writers who, had their own way of doing things. And most of that involved a lot of grim, gritty kind of stuff. And then the Justice League book shows up. And the fact of the matter is, it's kind of a deconstruction as well. You have, Blue Beetle and Booster Gold worrying about money, and Flash really worrying about money when he, of course, this is the Wally West Flash, when he shows up. You get to see the supervillains who are sort of, on the skids and not doing so great and trying to figure out what to do next with their lives. Should they stay with supervillainy? Should they not? It puts a lot more character into these characters than they would have gotten, most likely, especially those supervillains, during the Bronze Age of comics. But rather than everything being grim and gritty and horrible all the time, here it's done more for laughs. But I feel as though, for the most part, they did respect the characters. And maybe in a lot of ways, a lot of us will talk about Blue and Gold from these books. And obviously they became, fan favorites, these two characters. But maybe the character who looms largest in the Justice League book is Guy Gardner, for both good and bad reasons. Yeah, there's an element of him that is sort of a straw man stereotype of a macho guy, a sort of conservative guy, that it's there. It is. Kind of the same thing Marvel would do with U.S. Agent after he stopped being Captain America. But at the same time, they actually start injecting some depth into the character. And you got a little bit of that, I think, with Green Lantern Corps, a little bit of it, but I think much more so here. And even though Guy Gardner, well, I mean, he pretty much remains a jerk, he's not a completely unlovable jerk. And I think the way they managed to do that with him is with Ice. That if somebody as nice as her could find some good in Guy Gardner, boy, they had a couple of terrible dates. But if she could find some good in the guy, maybe there was some good in him to be found. Remember, the Guy Gardner storyline, he's not just a guy who's a jerk. He was a good guy. He would have been the Green Lantern instead of Hal Jordan had the alien crashed like on the East Coast of the United States. He was the next choice. But Hal Jordan was closer. He was a good man. He was actually, I believe, a PE teacher. And he was a good man. Over the course of the comics, Guy Gardner ends up with a head injury. And that's what makes him the way he is. So, you got to have a little sympathy for the guy. He didn't necessarily start out this way. But I think through the series, they do a lot more with the character than had ever been done anywhere else. And, he's, I think, a big enough character now that they decided to put him in that Superman movie. A lot of people enjoy Guy Gardner, yes, because he's obnoxious and it's kind of funny, but because there is a little bit more depth there. And that's what you got with these books. So they weren't just comedy. Giffen, DeMatteis, Gerard Jones weren't just writing comedy with these characters. There's a lot more to the books than that. Good action, some fun storylines, some great characterization, some genuine drama, genuine touching moments for these characters. And I think more people ought to read them. I really do. Don't pass these by just because these are the joke books. There's a lot more. There are a lot more than just that. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do Justice League Monday. I wanted to deep dive into this series, and because I'd missed issues here and there along the way. I remember when I started buying these books, I was buying them at 7-Eleven. And it was easy to miss them every once in a while. I think sometimes they wouldn't even necessarily get the same books every month. They got a smattering of books, and you got what you got. So I, filled in the gaps over time, but it was fun getting to actually read the series from issue 1 right on through to issue 52. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Obviously, this whole series is going to stay up. So if you are just tuning into this one, you can go back to the first one and you can watch them through. They're not going anywhere, and I hope you do. And again, even though they're old videos, feel free to leave comments any way through. I love to hear from folks and their feelings about this series, whether they loved it or whether they didn't love it. That's fine too. I'd still love to hear from you. So if you did enjoy this video and this series, please give it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel, maybe share with a friend. That would be great. Starting next Monday, we're going to do Thor Mondays. And specifically, because I do not have the first 52 issues of Thor, so to speak. I know the early ones weren't called Thor yet. Journey into Mystery. I don't have those. But what I do have, I did finally this year complete my collection of Walt Simonson's legendary run on Thor. We're going to go through that series week by week. And we are going to take a little detour for Balder the Brave, that miniseries as well. But we're going to go through Walt Simonson's Thor run in 2026. So tune in to Dad's Den for that. I'll set up a playlist for it, just like I've done with Justice League, and like I did last year with Alpha Flight. And maybe you want to check that out as well. But until then, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. And I will see you, hopefully again soon, in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.